This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net. And today we have Carey Sharp with us, who is a singer, songwriter, performer. Uh, she's living her dream, and she just released a new single and has a new video coming out. So, welcome to our show, Carey.
Thank
And
you. Thanks for having me.
oh, absolutely. So, tell us a little bit about who is Carey and why is Carey a music performer?
Sure. I've actually taken a sort of different path back to music. I was a musician all growing up, primarily violin and voice, and then decided to pursue a completely different career. And I went to college to study nursing, and I was a pediatric intensive care nurse practitioner and worked in critical care for about 12 years. Until just a couple of years ago, I completely shifted gears and got back into music. So it's been really quite a journey of not your typical path back into starting to record music again.
Well, and they are really two polar opposite fields, obviously. Uh, Being a pediatric nurse, I'm sure, uh, number one, you have to have the compassion for the children as well as the parents.
Both.
And a lot of studying goes into it. And
Mhm.
sadly, nurses are not as appreciated as doctors, and they should be.
Mhm.
So, what sort of made you decide to go into nursing when you loved music so much prior to that?
Well, two things kind of happened. I had just been studying music so much. I started playing violin when I was 3. And I was just so immersed in music for 15 years, really. I mean, that's really all I ever did. I always joke that, people ask like what sports I played, and I really didn't. All I did was music. So I guess I was almost just a little bit sick of it at the time when I was, deciding where to go to college. And I'd been offered a scholarship to study vocal and violin performance. And it just wasn't, I wasn't excited about it. I didn't really know what my path forward would be for a career in music at that time. I was so young. I probably would have ended up, like playing in an orchestra or something like that. But what I really always loved more was singing. And I just didn't really understand what my career could potentially be in that space. And then on the flip side, I was born with a very serious congenital heart disease. So I grew up, seeing my cardiologist several times a year and having a few minor, health issues, but nothing, major, but just felt really lucky and wanted to be able to give back to that community as well. So I really wanted to be a pediatric cardiologist. And when I started to pursue that path, I realized that it would be a lot harder to have a family as a cardiologist. And so I found kind of the middle ground of being a nurse practitioner instead, which was a really wonderful career choice. And I loved it very much. But after doing that for 12 years, I got kind of burned out in that space as well. As you can imagine, it's very physically, emotionally, mentally challenging and draining. So I was ready for a change. I have 2 young children. So after having my second, I was kind of ready to, leave that career field. And I kind of found my way back to music again.
Well, we're pretty lucky that you did. So, it's interesting. Everybody has a different path, and occasionally I'll hear um, young people say, "You know what? I'm too old to pursue my music," and I'll look at them and go, "So you're 19. Why
Oh,
why are you too old?" Or somebody who's in their 30s, "I put it on the back burner." And yet I'm finding more and more people now are coming out saying, "You know what? Um, I did this for so long. Now it's time to do something else." And if you really have the passion for it, um, you can make it work.
right.
Um, and we all have a different um, evaluation on what that success is and how it works.
Mhm.
Um, so obviously, you have a husband, you have children. So
Yep.
there would probably was a little bit of struggling, like leaving that job behind, which I'm sure paid decently to say, okay, I'm now going to give it up um, and pursue my music. So how did the family react?
Well, honestly, my family, first I'm going to talk about my parents because they were actually somewhat disappointed when I didn't study music to begin with back in college. I don't know if they were just surprised. I think everybody I knew was just like, oh, shocked kind of that wasn't just my natural path. Of course, they were proud of me for choosing, a service profession, but I think they were maybe a little disappointed. So my parents were thrilled when I started pursuing music again. And my husband, I think the same. He just like is so proud of me. And he was updating my website today, like spending all morning doing it because he's been like the biggest cheerleader for me. And he's got to watch the kids so I can I go out to LA once a month roughly and work with my team. And so he's willing to do that because he believes in me too, and he's been super supportive. So, and everyone around me has been like really supportive, which has been very helpful for me shifting gears and trying to redefine myself even. Like people have thought of me as this nurse for so long, and people that didn't know me when I was younger didn't even know that I can sing. So it's been really heartwarming to have people be so supportive of me shifting gears a little later in life compared to normally where people start.
And it's interesting that you played violin and sang, because when you play the violin, you obviously can't sing while you're playing. Um, so that sometimes sounds like a very unusual combination.
Mm-hmm.
Think of a singer or somebody who maybe plays guitar, plays the piano.
Right.
Um, so you started very early playing the violin at age 3.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know for a very long time that was a big thing in most communities, where if you had a child who appeared to have some talent, you got them into playing the violin. In fact, I never forget, my son one day said to me, probably was 3 or 4 years old, what is this all about a violin? And I said, what are you talking about? Well, he had a couple friends in preschool who were taking violin.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not musical. My husband isn't. We don't, neither one of us plays an instrument. And we just looked at him and we said, someday you can play an instrument. And I realized that was probably the worst thing I could have done for him, because his love is music and sports. Uh, so, yeah, I probably should have gotten him started. We're glad you did. Um,
Well,
with
if it tells you anything, I've got a 2.5-year-old and a 5-year-old, and neither of them take lessons yet because 3 is very early to start. So that's about the youngest you would even want to start. And my mom will say it was probably a little too young, but it's
but
okay.
back in the day, that's what a lot
Yeah.
of parents were doing.
I loved it. It was very challenging to teach a 3-year-old.
So, do you write your own music? And tell us a little bit about that.
I do. So I co-write. I have a team that I work with. There's primarily 4 of us that I've been working with. A good girlfriend of mine who's also a vocalist. She's really more of a jazz singer, but she's also has a fantastic voice, very different than mine. And then I work with 2 producer guys out in LA that also help songwrite and kind of bring the whole thing together. So this song actually that I released yesterday is the first song that the 4 of us wrote together, and we wrote it on the first day that we all met. We got together in the studio one afternoon and wrote and recorded it in about 10 hours. So, and now we've written about a dozen more tracks together, but this was the first. So you can see we just like have this very natural collaboration, and yeah, it's really fun to see it all coming together. All of the music we're working, every song is very different. So it's kind of cool to see how our dynamic works.
So, even despite COVID, you were able to travel back and forth and all work together.
Yep, we were. Yeah, we were doing, taking some precautions, of course, but and it's just the 4 of us, so it's not like some big group, but we were able to meet, testing and just, some strategic stuff like that. We're all young and healthy, so even though, of course, we are being cautious, we are all, low risk.
Absolutely. Because I know a lot of recording that's been going on has been everybody in separate studios and then trying to
Right.
put it all together. In
I
fact,
did a little bit of that too. It's really hard, especially when you're starting out. It would have been really tough to really get, the product, at least for me as a newcomer to writing. Certainly they have done a bit of that as well, but
and
this was.
and I'm very impressed with what you just talked about, that this song basically was put together in 10 hours.
Mhm.
Uh, earlier today we did another podcast with a singer songwriter, and so I was asking basically the same question. So, what does it take to write a song for you?
Mhm.
Um, and his answer basically was, I have to, work at it, stop, work at it, stop, and it's interesting how everybody does things differently.
Yeah.
uh, there are stories about some of the songs that the Beatles wrote that they walked into a room, they had an idea in 5 minutes, they had the words, and then they started playing with it, and within an hour they had a recording. Uh,
Right.
and there are others that um, started today and may not finish it for another 5, 10 years.
Right. You know, I'm sure that there will be times when we have some, and we've had a few songs that we've kind of had to come back to and they just weren't quite working the first time around. But generally, we come in with an idea, maybe some lyrics. And for Houses Burning, we did have some lyrics for sure. Aaron had come up with some great start to some of those lyrics. So we didn't start from literally nowhere, but we certainly didn't have, any of the track or any of the melody or any of that done yet. Um, so most of the time we do come in with at least an idea, sometimes some of the lyrics, and then sort of like some reference songs that we're kind of trying to be similar-ish to. And that process works really well for us. We sometimes, like, we were just there last week working on this show that we're writing together, and it was almost hard for us to stop ourselves from writing the song. We're like, okay, we know we need this song here, but we don't need to write it yet. And it just like kind of starts happening. We're like, okay, wait, no, we don't have time to do this right now. Like, let's keep, so it's just a very natural collaboration with us.
So, did you know these three other people previously?
I did not. Well, I've known Erin for years because she is from my hometown in Wisconsin, and she lived out in LA and pursued her music as a jazz singer for many years, and recently had just moved back to Oshkosh. So we kind of reconnected. And so she knew Drew, one of my producers, from when she lived out in LA, but she hadn't seen him in about 10 years. So when I was like, let's, work on some music, at first I was just going to maybe do some cover songs, just kind of for
Sure.
fun. And she's like, well, let's try writing some music. And so she's like, let me reach out to some of my friends out in LA. And Drew had been working on the song, on the show Songland. So she knew that he was doing a lot of songwriting and producing. And he's a phenomenal guitar player. I'm like, just absolutely fantastic. He's toured with a ton of people. So she reconnected with him, and then his partner, Adam, is kind of, he's also a producer, but he's kind of like the track master. He's like a really, really fantastic DJ, and he really does like the track part. He also plays guitar and keys and stuff like that. So the four of us together kind of have each little piece. And there's certainly some overlap, but together, like, we just have a great collaboration.
And, this is something that I have noticed in the last couple of years since we've been doing these interviews is that musicians, um, people in the industry, they love finding other people in the industry
Mhm.
and collaborating and working with them. It's not the vision that many of us have. We think, oh, they want to do it themselves, okay? But you're all out there helping each other, making the next one better, finding what somebody else is good in, learning from them, but keeping your strength where it
Mhm.
is. So when you and your girlfriend, started putting this all together, and it had been years since you had actually, been together, what was it like the first time?
The first time that we all worked on music
Yeah,
together, I was really nervous because I'd never written music before, at least not professionally. Of course I'd, done, but never like written, actually recorded and put out music before. And I'd recorded a bit, but just, the kind of classical or cover music that I had done in my high school years, really. So I was really nervous to get back into it again. And she was just super, super encouraging of me, as were Drew and Adam. So it was like a little bit of a process. I was definitely like a little shy, I guess I would say, in the first, couple hours of the session, certainly. Which is funny because that's not my personality at all, and nobody would describe me that way. But I just was, it was like kind of new territory for me. And I'm sure you've heard of like the imposter syndrome. I mean, you definitely feel that way when you're coming into something again after like being away for almost 20 years.
right.
So I just, I knew I had this background. I knew I have talent and stuff in me. It's just been laying dormant for so long that I had to really believe in myself again and my ability to, bring out my background now.
And it's really important for people to understand that, if it's something that you really want to do, don't expect that the first moment you start doing it, you're going to feel comfortable. You have to really go through that uncomfortable phase. Um, I know when I started podcasting, I kept telling people, "Oh, I can do this. This is no big deal." Um, and the first person I went to interview happened to be a local um, DJ here in the Cleveland area. And I knew him personally. And I thought, well, I already know him. This is going to go over easy. And I almost froze. It was like, I had no idea. Like, I had notes. And then I realized I don't need notes. Okay. Because I'm better just having the conversation.
Right.
But that first interview, I felt like, who am I? Why am I doing this? I don't deserve to do it.
Right.
But if it's something you want to do, keep doing it. It's not up to other people. It's up to you. So
Well, I like what you said earlier about, I think, and even really for me, I think there's this misconception that these artists are creating this music alone, because when you're a solo artist, like I am in this, single, that you don't really see the team behind these artists. But I think I read somewhere that the average song has like at least 7 writers on it and producers, or, it's a ton of people that, for most artists, a ton of people go into creating these songs. So I guess I don't understand why that isn't like a little bit more like recognized. But for me, that's actually really important. So like in my first music video, my whole team is in the video with me because I wanted to show that. I wanted to show that transformation, and they're so important to that process. And they've been so supportive of me that it was really important that we were all in it together, even though it's like my single and I'm singing it. So that, I really will always be incredibly appreciative and recognizing the people behind me that are.
well, and I think the reason we think that, if we think of people like um, Lady Gaga or someone like her,
Mhm.
yeah, she does have a team. She's got a band. She's got dancers. But we don't think of them as being part of her actual team other than when she's performing. And the reality of it is, she, as great as she has other people who are watching over her and things.
Mhm.
Um, but we just still have that mentality, well, they're doing it all alone.
Right.
Um, and that's great to think, but I'm really proud of you for bringing your team in and making sure that they are acknowledged, they are seen. Um,
They're
because
incredible. I mean, they're so amazing. So to me, I almost feel like phony just being the one on the single, because it's like, well, this really isn't just me. I'm just happen to be the voice on it. But it's, coming from my background as in healthcare, that is such a team environment, and I love that environment and I thrive in it. So even the concept of trying to do this alone doesn't even appeal to me, because I love collaboration. I love people. I love working with people. So that was something I was really missing after I left my career. And I was really sad about I missed my colleagues and just that environment. And I hadn't really found that dynamic again. And now in music and collaboration with these other creatives, I've found it again. And it's a really, really rewarding and special way.
so give us a hint. What is this new single all about?
Uh, well, it's actually about not what you'd expect. As I mentioned, my husband and I are very happily married. So it's not a romantic um, problem. It was a personal issue actually with my sister. So, and I don't talk about it much, so I don't need to go in much more detail than that. But it was just something, a kind of a falling out between a sister and actually a good friend of mine too. And just, I felt like they had kind of left me behind, and I was really hurt. I'm over it now, but it's that at that time when we wrote it, this was back in August, it was very raw for me. It was really, really hard to talk about even at the time. And just a couple of months ago when we filmed the music video, I cried several times revisiting that and being in the moment performing it, for the video. And I was trying to track some additional vocals for the very end of the song, and I just kept crying. So I was like, I guess it's good how it is. Like, I can't do it. So it's still emotional for me to revisit it in this song. But I'm just in a much better place now. So I probably wouldn't write this now, but it's still, I still remember those feelings listening
Well,
to it.
and the interesting thing about a song, so we, now we know a little bit about the background, but at the same time, when we all hear it, okay, it's either going to take us back to a time in our life
Mm-hmm.
or make us think about something that might happen in the future. And that's what I love so much about, you know, listening to all kinds of music because many of us grow up listening to the same thing on the radio all the time. Okay. Um, in fact, I remember, probably about a little over 4 years ago, um, my brother really started pushing me to listen to jazz. And I thought there was one kind of jazz. Okay. And, I was listening. I was like, yeah, I like this. He said, well, now try this. And it was like, well, that's totally different. He said, but
Mm-hmm.
it's jazz. And
Yeah.
then I started realizing I've been walking around with blinders on most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
If it didn't play on my car radio, I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah.
And so now when I listen to music, and especially things that are not, something that I'm hearing every single day,
Mm-hmm.
I find myself falling into the music and picturing something that relates to me.
Right.
So um, I'm sorry that you had to live through some sadness, but I'm glad that you're giving us beautiful, beautiful rendition. So, what do you see in the future now that COVID is slowly, bringing us out? Do you see any performances or anything that we can look forward to?
Yeah, so I'm going to be releasing a couple more singles just kind of as a solo artist or, a solo artist. But what I'm really working on now with the group that wrote this song with me is we're actually writing a full musical. So we're going to be doing sort of a mini version of it. It's almost like a pilot version of it is the best way I can think of it. This upcoming October, actually at a theater that I helped to restore in my hometown. So we're going to be putting that show on there live, and then we're going to kind of start to build that and see where that goes. So that's kind of our next big step.
So, where's your hometown so we can all converge in it?
Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
Big place, but it's I was born and raised there, and we still spend half the year there. So we'll be back there this fall, and we're going to do this show. So
That that sounds marvelous. Um, before the show goes on, get back in touch with us so we can talk about it. Maybe it will be safe enough for some of us to even travel and, you know,
I hope so. I think so. It's not a big theater, so we can keep it really, it's pretty small and we can keep it pretty controlled, which I think it'll be okay by October. I'm hopeful.
I would hope so. And Wisconsin's beautiful, so it's a
Yeah.
nice place to vacation. So
Yeah.
again, tell us what the name of the single is.
House is Burning. And you can find me, it's Carey Renee on Spotify or Apple or any of your streaming platforms. And then the video will be coming out tomorrow on YouTube.
So we ask everybody to please go out and listen. And, you probably should pay something for listening. We appreciate if you pay for the formats because that's the only way that you're going to be able to continue to create music, um, if we all share in the process. So I
Yeah.
want to thank you very much. Have a great day. And
You
I look
too.
forward to hearing more of your music.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Here. Bye bye now.